The whole pose, Trikonasana. Take your feet wide. Everyone in? And got everyone in? Back toes in, front foot and leg out. It's full moon, it flushes all the yogis out. Stretch the arms, inhale, exhale, coming down. Back of the thigh towards the front of the thigh up. Trikonasana is a lovely pose, I think. I could do it again and again, and we are doing it again and again. Abhyasa, vairagya, abhyam tanirodha, Patanjali says. Abhyasa, repetition, vairagya, with spacious mind. Abhyam, to get together, brings about nirodha, this sort of non-compulsive proliferation of like the tumbling on and on and on of haphazard living is negated when you repeatedly come back to spaciousness, as if you were in a Buddhist Centre, upper shrine room in the sun. You can imagine how nice that would feel. Inhale. So that's a longer stay this time. Good. Nice, Tom. I like that with the tip of your hand. Back toes in, front foot and leg out, turning on the ball of the foot, finishing off the turn on the heel. Breathe through your nose. Make sure your stride is as generous as mine. Don't be stingy. Go generous. It's called utthita, which means extended. Check that your heel lines up with your arch. Stretch your arms. Lovely. Good. I like that. Inhale. Exhale. Back of your leg towards the front of your leg. Breathing through your nose. Enjoyment, bhoga in Sanskritam, B-H-O-G-A, bhoga, is a fundamental part of successful yoga. We're told in a variety of texts, including the Sankhya Karika. So, enjoyment. So we can accept that. Okay, I accept that. Enjoyment's part of yoga. But is it part of your yoga here and now? And if you agree that it sounds like an okay principle, how can you make it part of your yoga here and now? Enjoyment. For me, the first thing I have to do is take the pressure off myself. For me to enjoy a pose, take the pressure off. Inhale. Good job. Lovely. Beautiful. Feet face forwards, hands on the hips. Take a deep breath. Or two. Or three. Or 347. Any amount. While you're breathing deep, take your front foot forwards, that is to say your right foot towards the front of the room, towards Vajrasattva, towards Tara, towards Avalokiteshvara. Front foot took right close to the front of the mat. Yeah, you got it, you got it. That's it, towards this side. That's it. And the other foot goes back. It's a big diagonal stance. I've got one foot at the back, almost at the back of the mat, and one foot almost at the front of the mat. Obviously, it does depend slightly on height and leg length. We're going to stretch the arms out. Hopefully, this will confuse the hell out of you. That's my plan. Inhale. Good job. Exhale. Keep breathing. Lovely. That's it. Relax your jaw. Raise your arm if you want. So this is also Trikonasana. Let's not forget that Trikonasana features in precisely no Hatha Yoga text, classical text. So it's a contemporary pose, but it still has yogic principles of absorption potentially within it, up to us here and now. Good, that's a good sign. I like it when it wobbles. Because, we have a program probably for Trikonasana. It's like, oh, Trikonasana. And we think this is it. It's like, oh, this is kind of, the body kind of assumes, but it isn't it, is it? It's different. Inhale. Good job. Calmly walk your feet towards each other so you've got more stability, and then swap. One foot back, one foot forward. It should be your left foot that's forwards. If you're on this side of the room, you're taking it towards Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara. Well worth learning about Avalokiteshvara. Here's his mantra on my shin in the Tibetan script. He's well good, isn't he? Stretch your arms. Just check the front foot is parallel to the front of the mat. Imagine for a minute that I was checking all of your feet and I was a bit uptight. Imagine that. Because it's true. So just check that it's parallel. Oh, thanks, Dan. You saw my eyes coming on your foot and collected. Lightly tone the tummy, inhale, exhale. So discombobulation, in other words, negating the mind's ability to cling onto a program, leaves the mind in an open state where its only choice is to ride the waves of the moment. Right? Ride the waves of the moment. So every time the mind tries to superimpose an idea, we do it with people, don't we? You know, our friend, this person, that person. We have assumptions about them. And those assumptions don't allow that person to be as they really are. Similarly, for Trikonasana, let it be as it really is, which is like this. And you've got to breathe freely if you want to let things be as they are. Otherwise, you're trying to grasp them. And grasping living reality, in case you didn't know yet, is impossible. Can't be grasped. It can be known, but not grasped. Inhale. Good job. Walk your feet towards each other. Shake out or kick out. Take some deep breaths so you feel looser. So you might think, well, we've done Trikonasana. I suppose it doesn't have history. Let's do one with history. So we're going to bring our feet together. We're going to come into Vrikshasana. It's a pose with at least a 2,500 year history. Happy birthday. Raise up your right heel and move the leg. So we know from Strabo's Geographica 150 before Common Era, for example, that this pose is mentioned. We know there's allusions to it in the Pali Canon of the Buddhist tradition, 250 before Common Era. But we know that these are writings about earlier times. Once you feel loose, and particularly feel focused on your standing foot, right? Wake up the arches in any way you can. I move backwards and forwards, I move medial, lateral. It doesn't matter what you do, it matters what it's doing for you. It should wake up your arches. You have three: medial, lateral, transverse. When you're ready, and excitingly, raise your foot up. And then you're going to bring your heel into your thigh. And it's kind of wobbly fun, and hands into prayer. Now, in Strabo's Geographica, which was Strabo, who was a Greek author, it was his writings about the world, Geographica. He mentions that at the time of Alexander the Great, 200 years before him, Alexander and his cohorts had seen what he calls gymnosophists. Or is it gymnosophists? I don't speak ancient Greek. It's one of those two anyway. What is a gymnosophist or gymnosophist? It is a naked philosopher, right? And they were standing on one leg, holding a stick. So he called them Danda Swami. So you hold a stick. Imagine you're holding a stick. Put one in front of you and imagine you're holding it. And he said that they held a stick 1 cubit in length, and they raised it up above their heads while standing on one leg, out in the broad day sun, in the nude, I'm sorry to say, shocked to say, being a sort of uptight British fellow, it's shocking news to me, like that. And they do that all the day long, right? So those are the gymnosophists. They're called Danda Swamis, which people presume they're called Danda Swamis. The Greek is not quite the same as the Sanskrit, because they hold a stick. Okay, bring your danda, your stick, down, and if your imagination is really good, you have to drop it. Make sure you don't drop it on your foot. Okay, and then you come back and shake out. So you stay super, super, super loose. And that can be really dynamic or slow, you know, depends what sort of actually creates flow. Sometimes we think we should be really dynamic, and that just sort of triggers us. And sometimes we think we should be really slow, and that just makes, you know, it's just listen and respond. Once you're feeling alive, then similar to the first side, we're going to take the other foot up, the heel up, and we're going to use that opportunity to feel into the standing leg. So moving backwards, moving forwards, waking up the standing leg foot. Spend a bit of time stretching the foot, changing the weight ratios on the foot. And that should bring your arches online. Medial, lateral, transverse. And when you're ready, it might not be yet, but when you're ready, similarly to the other side, you bring your heel, ideally, if you can, into the top of the inner thigh. Now, I don't really have to explain why I wear these kind of shorts. You probably realize that they look amazing. That's the number one reason I wear them. But also, in addition, shorts do help with poses like this. So if you do slip on your leggings, a couple of things you can do. You can roll them up as long as it doesn't cut off the blood supply. You could also put a belt around the standing leg thigh, and that can help your foot grip. Hands to the heart, breathing through your nose. Vrikshasana. Much later in the timeline, we have practitioners, and they're still doing this practice now, who stand on one leg using a swing that's hung often traditionally from a tree, not always, but traditionally from a tree. And this is where the name tree pose comes from. A pose that you do using a swing that's hung from a tree because you stand so incredibly long. A philosophy that's come through the Indian timeline, probably from the 2500 and before, from the Jains, the practitioners called the Jains. So keep breathing through your nose, jaw soft, eyes soft. Take your danda, your stick, like the danda swamis. Swami means swa means yourself. Swami means master of yourself. So these masters, they become masters of themselves using a stick. Very interesting. Okay. Lower your stick. Let it go. Bring your foot down. Shake out and loosen off. Shake out and loosen off. Taking deep, natural, easeful breaths. On the outer rows, step towards the end of your mat this way. On the outer rows, step this way, step this way, step this way. In the middle row, step this way. Face towards this direction. Raise your arms up. Inhale, exhale. Come down, touch the floor. So bend your knees, probably, not necessarily, but probably, especially this time of day. Because the connective tissue on the back of the leg is one, from the feet, through the calves, through the back thighs, through the gluteals, through the lower back. If you move your feet, you'll find that the tissue on the back of your legs will loosen up, it will limber up. Because movement helps to hydrate and melt and heat. Myofascia and all of those things basically boil down to better flow. From here, step back to Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. Pad your paws into a deeper weave. If for any reason you slip on your mat, you can use one of two techniques to help you not slip. Well, one of three techniques. Technique number one is bed your paws, the molecules of your hands, into the molecules of the mat, like a cat paws at your nice furniture. When it wants to settle down, you can pad your paws so they mesh in with the mat. If that doesn't work, you can use a belt across the front of the mat for the heels of your hands. And if not that, you can hold the sides of the mat, physically hold them in your hands and use that to keep your stability. Extend up through your back. Open up the inner groins, the top of the inner thighs, and feel the back of the thighs subtly draw in as the front of the thighs subtly draw up. It's magical, it's meditative, and it's breath-centered. Open the armpits, inner, outer, under. Inner armpit is the same side as your thumb. Outer armpit is the same side as your little finger. Under is if you divide the armpit into top and bottom. The under is the side nearest your legs. Open your inner, outer, under armpits. We're going to jump, step, walk, stagger, catch a number 21 bus, whatever you can. We're going to get our feet back. That's a good bus, apparently, from this sort of Elm Grove area, Hanover area. A good bus to get to this class. Breathe easy, jaw soft. Bend your ankles, knees, and hips if they're not bent already. They're probably bent already, but bend them more until your ribs touch your thighs. Utkatasana, utkata, often translated in modern postural yoga as fierce, but Jim Mallinson, in a conversation recently with Kadeen Morecambe, said, I don't know why people call it that, because that ain't the Sanskrit. The Sanskrit is, utkata means squatting. Now you can raise your arms up like you're skiing, quite sort of rapidly behind you, like you're aerodynamically skiing. And anyone who's ever been skiing might start doing the bumps, right? I've never been skiing. I've just been told by skiers that as you go down, there's like little bumps and there's little swerves, you know. So, and if you've never been skiing and you feel like you're neither, you know, young enough to start now or have enough money in the bank, then, you know, this is your opportunity to pretend at least that you're skiing. So bumps and movements. Of course, these will be intuitive and they'll be there to stop the body gripping, grasping, grabbing. We're going to bring the arms forwards and up. Keep the pose with some movement in the pose. Let it move back, up, down, left, right. Close your eyes even if you want. The point is to be absorbed here and now, to disappear, not to build up tension, but to distribute the energy so that lactic acid doesn't build and fatigue the muscles. Stand up, take a big wide circle, hands to your hips, turn back towards the front and step your feet apart. Jaw soft, eyes soft. Breathing deep and honest and expressive. Turning in your left toes, turning out your right foot on the ball of the foot first, and then finish the last bit off on the heel. Take your hands like this, like you're a bear. Breathe through your nose. Bend your front knee and then re-extend it. Do it 2, 3, 4, 5 times so you feel like the tissue that's resisting that begins to melt, hydrate, and warm. You can do things like lifting the toes if you want, or heel even, just to bring everything more into alignment. And eventually when things start feeling looser, let your pelvis move and let your monstrous hands come down to wherever they come to the floor, maybe fingertips, maybe elbows, wherever you come to. And jaw soft. So your hands are in front of your leg. Good, lovely, looks great. Breathe through your nose. Perfect. The closer your arms get to the floor, the closer you are to spiritual awakening is a complete lie. It could just be you've got short shins and long arms, couldn't it? So that's not necessarily inherently spiritually awake. Not all Buddhas have short shins and long arms. So what makes this correct yoga practice is moving in a way that creates a sense of absorption into the richness that this is in reality. This is a richness of interdependency, where body tissues are all interdependent with each other, where breath is interdependent with body tissues, where your attitude is interdependent with your breath. So breathe into it. Look for integration, yoga. Forcing resistance out of the way isn't the purification we're looking for. Forcing resistance out of the way. We've got Vajrasattva, he's associated with purification. We've discussed that purification takes repetition after discussing the cleaning of the glass atrium and the one seagull poo that's now on it. Okay, climb back up. I hope you can. I hope you're not stuck there. Inhale, come back up. Oh. Feet forwards, hands on the hips. Take deep breaths. And one facial recommendation is to have a shocked face after that. That's one choice. You could have like, oh, that's one face. You could have other faces are available. Turn your back toes in, front foot and leg out, heel to arch alignment. Double check, triple check, quadruple check. Check as if I was checking. I'm checking. Okay. Make sure you go long enough as well. And again, take your hands into this bear-like position and bend and extend, tracking almost a little arc with the knee. So the knee tracks round towards the gap between the second and third toe. And this begins to help stretch the adductors, the inner thigh muscles, brevis longus magnus and gracilis. And eventually coming down to wherever you come to, breath and release. So moving in and letting go are part of the same thing. If you want to move in, you've got to allow time for letting go. And it's breath that's a big part of that. Because the body is already pre-arrested by conditioning. There's already moduses, modal operandis running through the body that are also in the mind, that are also in the breath. So moving in requires letting go. So moving in requires letting go. So moving, playing, allowing a time for that which is resistant to release. It may be that you can easily bring the elbows down, but is it wise yet? Or you can bring the fingers down or whatever. Is it wise yet? It's wise when it's integrated, when all the fibers agree, when those that are disagreeing have released. So that's the process of absorption. Jaw soft, eyes soft. Bring your hands either side of your front foot. Externally rotate your back heel. Step back. Adho Mukha Svanasana. Breathe through your nose. Pad your pores, your hands, that is, into a deeper weave. Pad your pores, your hands, that is, into the deepest weave you can with the mat. Repeatedly pad them. Open up your inner armpits. Open up the outer armpits. Remember, inner armpit correlates to the index finger, thumb side. Opening up means moving in a way, again, that acknowledges that to move in, you've got to also let go. The example I always give, and I won't mention his name because he'd be embarrassed, it's my friend James Lance. He once did a funny, silly thing. And when we were in Thailand, he was trying to paddle off his canoe and he had it tied up still. It only took him 5 seconds to realize, and he untied it, and with one stroke, he was off. So being tied up still means here not letting go as you're moving. You've got to let go as you're moving. Open the outer armpit, open the under armpit. Good. Walk your feet towards each other a little closer. Now be mindful of who or what is behind you, because we are going to raise a leg. We don't want to kick anyone and we don't want to kick anything. So raising the leg that's closest to this side of the room with due care, straight up behind you. Good. Having felt peaceful that you haven't kicked anyone or anything, then bend and extend the knee. You can internally rotate, externally rotate. You can do things like raising the heel of the foot that's on the floor and bringing it down again. Intuitive movements. Eventually, we turn the leg to face the same way as the rest of the body. So if you've turned it out, you turn it back in. Bend the knee, and with perhaps 1 or 2 steps, or perhaps one, the foot comes forwards into the place of its own hand. So the hand has to move out of the way as the foot comes forwards. And you calm down if you want. So you breathe, you move. Remember that the 2 aspects are moving in and letting go. Right? So as you move in, part of that has to be letting go. If you want to paddle off your canoe, you've got to untie it from the shore, right? So moving in, letting go. And the knee moves up and the knee moves down and the knee turns in and the knee turns out. And eventually the knee lands and you just feel if that's right. And if you feel like you need a little micro adjustment, take it. So you might lift and land several times until it just feels right. Right here means that everything comes together. You feel concentrated, focused. Climb up onto your leg with your hands. If your back knee is uncomfortable, firstly, don't worry. There you go, there's some good advice. Don't worry. Okay, and secondly, focus on the inner groin of the back leg, the inner groin. So this is where the psoas and iliacus muscles are. And imagine that you feel that stretch, which is obviously there in this posture, turning into release. Follow it through with your arms upwardly. So you feel that stretch turning into release, which is a mental release as well as physical, because they're together always, mind and body, mental as well as physical. So feel that release like the muscle is saying, I agree. In Sanskrit, Om, I agree. Well done. Come forwards calmly. Don't rush, don't rush, don't rush. Lift your back knee up. Step back into Adho Mukha Svanasana. Down face dog, previously known as Gajasana in older texts. Elephant pose, in other words. Breathe through your nose, pad your pores into the deepest contact you can have. Remember, your mind and body truly are the same thing. What happens to one happens to the other. It's important and useful information. If your mind is calm, the body is stable. If the body is stable, the mind is calm. Hence, Sthira Sukham Asanam.
from 246 Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. Walk your feet a little closer to each other. Breathe through your nose. Again, be aware that you're not going to kick anyone or anything as you raise your other leg up. So raise it with, relative slowness, so that if you do impact on anything or anyone, it's very, very gentle. And then play with bending, extending, turning out, turning in. This is the top leg I'm talking about. Lifting and landing the heel of the bottom leg. This all helps to hydrate the myofascia, not just of the legs, of course, but of the back and through the abdomen. And with the breath coming and going, bend the knee in the air, turning. If you externally rotated it, internally rotate it now. And on an exhalation, perhaps 2 or 3 steps, but perhaps 1, foot comes forwards into the place of its own hand. The knee lands behind the pelvis, considerably far behind the pelvis. So not forwards, but backwards. Not forwards, backwards, behind the pelvis. Still breathing through your nose with jaw soft and eyes soft. Jaw soft and eyes soft. Lift and land your knee so it feels right. Like tuning in an old-fashioned radio, such as my granddad Stanley Slater's Roberts radio that I have in the kitchen of my house. When you tune it, you can feel like, oh, that's nearly the station. That's not quite it. And then you get the station, but you want it clearer. So this is similar. The station is your sort of focus. Let's call it radio yoga. So tuning into radio yoga, which yoga, of course, can mean absorption or connection. Climbing up if you're ready, when you're ready. And if the back knee is uncomfortable on the floor, a couple of things you can do. You can readjust the knee position, of course. You can choose whether or not your toes are tucked under, of course. But best of all, I think, is to focus on an upward release, which is mental, physical, and respiratory happening at the same time. So focus on that inner groin from the top of the inner thigh. There's a stretch across the pubic bone. It goes underneath your belly muscles and attaches to the sides of your lower spine. Don't just feel the stretch. Say yes to it as you raise your arms up. Yes. Sanskrit word, Om. Agreement. Om just means agreement. This is agreed with. Om. So agreement means every aspect of your being, instead of this aspect wanting left and the other aspect wanting right, every aspect of your being comes into agreement, comes together through the practice of letting go, moving in and letting go. Move into the sensations by letting go. Let go by moving in. Good job. Beautiful. Come down. Lift up your back knee. Step back to Adho Mukha. Downward facing dog. Breathe through your nose. Move your pelvis left and right. Really get some contact with the mat with your hands. There's a lot of different things you could do. I quite like lifting my whole foot up on one leg. That's one thing I do sometimes, like I'm some sort of creature walking along the moon, like a lizard on the moon. You know what I mean. Everyone knows what a lizard on the moon looks like. Or you could bend and extend your knees, or you could move your pelvis. It's about tuning in. Any movement, therefore, that helps you to come together, to bring everything together, which means moving in and letting go. What stops us being together are the different pulls that pull us. We're pulled towards this social group, that social group, and some of the things we're pulled to are in disagreement with other things we're pulled to. What joy it is to bring everything together. Bring your feet a little closer. Again, hopefully now you're fully aware of the space that's behind you and no injuries should incur as you raise the leg that's closest to me. Once again, up. Play with the internal rotation, external rotation, bending, extending modalities. Breathing into it. When you're ready, this time it's different because we are going to turn the body forwards, bend the knee, but the knee's coming forwards to the floor behind its own wrist. So the right knee to the back of the right wrist on the floor. Good job. Then the foot moves diagonally across the body and you stretch back your other leg. Nice and slow. If you have any dukkha, any discomfort in your knee, lean across towards it.
you've got two choices. Some people feel immediate relief if they come to the forearms. Some people prefer to be up and lifted. And of course, there'll be a whole group of us who will get FOMO if we do one without the other. So you could do both. So height and space, if you're doing the lifting up version at this point, imagine that you're lifting one vertebrae off the other. The pose itself is called Ekapada Rajaka Uttanasana. And it talks about, is Ekapada means 1 foot. Raja is king. Kapota is a particular kind of grey pigeon. So if you are in the upright position, you puff your chest up like a pigeon who's in love. You've seen pigeons in love. They run around after the girl pigeons. The girl pigeons look disinterested or positively repelled. And then the male pigeons just run after them, running around in mad circles with their chest puffed up. It's similar to West Street on a Friday night as well, with human beings. So, chest puffed up or leaning forwards, but disappear into it. Use your breath to say, Om. I agree. Moving in and letting go. I agree. If you are up in the pose, I need to call it in the pigeon. And if you're up in the pose, come down a bit. If you're down, then come up. Yes, you did sound like a pigeon, didn't you? Then tuck the back toes down and go back to hands and knees. Maybe that's why it's called pigeon. When you do it right, you can't help but to go. Lift up your palm and take a few deep breaths. Feel free to let out any pigeon noises that come spontaneously. And enjoy your life. And your life isn't something that's going to happen. This is it, right? This moment now is your life. So it's like, oh no, get through my yoga so I can get to my breakfast, or brunch. And then get through my brunch so I can get to my book or, walk on the beach. Get through the walk on the beach so I can get through to Sunday. Sunday's a good day. And then get through, and then it's the week again. Get through that to get on and on. Some people are even getting through their months and years so they can get to retirement even. But this is it right now. This is it. This is it. This room full of photons, full of photons, light particles. Bring your feet closer, raise up the other leg, be aware of what's behind you. Play, bending, extending, internally rotating, externally rotating. Any movements that feel just right in terms of falling in love with this moment, which is an interdependent field of body, brain, breath, universe. When ready, the knee bends, the knee comes forwards and lands on the floor behind its own wrist. And then take your time to move the foot diagonally and stretch the leg back. Again, if there's any dukkha, discomfort in the knee capsule, lean across it. That's simply because of the sort of engineering of it. If you put a lot of weight directly above your bent leg foot, then that presses down the foot, which then, because the floor doesn't move, causes the foot to come, as it were, back up, causing pressure on the medial meniscus. You could lift up, you could come down, up to you. If you're lifting up, suck in the tummy and imagine the vertebral bodies lifting off each other. Vertebral bodies are just the bones that make up your vertebrae. So lift those up, the main bones that make your vertebrae, lift them up. Or come forwards is fine too. Really stretch your tummy if you're in the lifted up version. Really lift your chest. Remain soft and in love with regards to areas like your knees. Be aware of the pelvic floor as well. Be aware of the pelvic floor. Jaw soft, eyes soft, throat soft. Brain soft. Tongue soft. An alternative to doing this pose is laying on your back cross-legged. does many of the same things. So if you find this pose difficult, cross your legs and lay it on your back. Just like if you'd been sitting cross-legged, but you were laying back. That's an alternative to this pose. Okay. Not quite like that, Barbara, but more like this. Like from this cross-legged. Yeah. Take a few more deep breaths. And if you're down, come up. If you're up, come down. And tucking the back toes under, back knee forwards, come to hands and knees. And you can wag your tail. Now, Marichyasana Pittalasana, as it's called nowadays, is often translated as cat, cow. But I had my suspicions that it was wrong Sanskrit, so I checked it out. And I found that Marichyasana does indeed mean cat, but Pittalasana, or Pittalasana, isn't a word in Sanskrit, first of all, but Pittalasana is, and Pittala means cat as well, right? So it's cat pose, not cat, cow. And actually the Pittala is a kind of wild cat. It's just anyway, there's a nerd point for you there if you're interested in nerd points. Now we're going to do it a little different, perhaps to how we might have done it before. So we're going to imagine the pubic bone. Actually, just come out of that position. I just need to show you something with my fingers. Here's my fingers. Imagine this is your breastbone, and down the bottom is your pubic bone. What we're going to do, and these are your muscle fibers, right? What we're going to do is slide our muscle fibers into a deeper weave, like that. We're going to do that first, and then we're going to pull them apart into a longer weave. I hope that visualization is both enjoyable and informative. Let's do it. So I'll describe it more. That visualization will make sense, I think. So feel where your pubic bone is. Feel where your breastbone is. Between them are the abdominal muscles of a variety of kinds, particularly the rectus abdominis superficially. So now pull the muscle fibers from above and below into a deeper weave, pulling the pubic bone and breastbone towards each other. But imagine them coming into a deeper weave. Use the abdominals exclusively. In other words, don't use other muscles to help you move into it. Just use the abdominals. And as you round, or as the back is rounded, you'll feel your abdominal muscles coming into this deeper and deeper weave. So this is concentric contraction of the abdominals. And if you think you've taken it to the deepest weave that you can, you haven't. Take it a little deeper. There's always a little deeper. It's quite intense, though. It makes quite a deep impression into our muscular nervous system. And that, of course, might have some challenge for us. Now, you keep that tone, and we're going to bring like I was pulling my fingers apart, we're going to pull and stretch those fibers, but they keep their tone. So each cell within each string of cells, which I'm calling a fiber, a string of cells is a fiber, each cell keeps its tone, but the fibers are stretched and pulled away from each other, like pulling the fibers on a piece of material. Breathing through your nose, shoulder blades deep into the back body. Really, really stretching. And then I think it's even more interesting to recontract, but you have to be disciplined with yourself. Imagine it's just purely those fibers coming in to a deeper weave. There's obviously temptation to sort of do it in a quicker way. And that's because we're conditioned to get on with things. And we're also conditioned to let the body be run by some of the programs that are expressions of our perceptions and views. So this profoundly deep ask does challenge what the body's holding already, but that purifies the body.
We've got Vajrasattva on the shrine. He's all about purification. That purifies the body, that is to say, of its habituations. If you've come to your full contraction, your back is really rounded, then contract a little bit more. Pretty intense. It should feel quite intense. One more eccentric contraction where the muscles are toned, the cells are toned but stretched. So you stretch them like pulling the fingers. You saw my fingers. They're sort of pulling into a longer weave, but it's with tone. With tone. The head eventually begins to lift, the hands press down, the shoulder blades go deep, but you're focusing on your tummy tone. Good. From there into Adho Mukha Svanasana, down face dog. Walk your hands so close that your thumb tips touch. Walk your hands so close that your thumb tips touch. And spread your hands out as if they're two suns, such as they have on the planet Tatooine from Star Wars. Take your feet apart. It's the best I could do, I'm afraid. Take your feet apart so they're really wide. Really wide. So they're almost, I've got quite a wide pelvis, I'm pleased to say. My feet are half on, half off the mat. That feels really good and wide. Then open the inner armpit through the chest to the groins. Open the outer armpit at the same time. Then the under armpit ties those two ends together and pulls on them further still. Well done, gang. Come down to hands and knees and then down to your back. Okay, so lay down on your back. Good job, everyone. I'll just put the microphone somewhere better. Good, legs bent, soles of the feet on the floor. Let me hear you take a deep breath in with a deep breath out like a sigh. So take a few deep breaths. Let your lower back release itself. Let your lower back release itself. Let your neck release itself. So I'm quite deliberately saying, let your lower back release itself. Let your neck release itself. Hands can be on the upper chest, by the way. To make that comfortable with the hands on the upper chest, it can be useful to move your shoulder blades by lifting each elbow several times. It's a bit like lazy line dancing, right? So you're just lifting and moving your shoulder blades several times until it feels right, like there's more agreement. Having the hands on the upper chest will naturally encourage the breath to breathe up into the hands. We're not trying to make ourselves breathe up into the hands, which is why I said it will encourage the breath to do it naturally. Let your neck relax. Let the jaw relax. Let the lower back relax. Observe the lower back releasing itself. Right, now raise up the leg closest to this side of the room, whether it's close to Avalokiteshvara or Vajrasattva or Tara, and move your foot back and forth between plantar flexion, like a ballet dancer, and dorsiflexion, like a dancer from Stomp, and go back and forth between those two. And if you want, add circles, half circles. You can even add bending and extending and shaking. What we're just trying to do is get some life in the leg. So shaking can help, bending, extending, and foot movements. It ain't what you do, but the way that you do it was a song that was written in 1938, made famous by the Fun Boy 3. But it works very well for yoga, that song. Every lyric is perfect description of how to practice yoga. So turn the heel in when you're ready, toes out, cross that leg over the other. Breathe through your nose. Jaw soft. And breathing freely. So move freely in ways that allow your breath to move freely, because your breath and mind and body are the same thing. So if your breath wants to flow, it demands that the body has natural or spontaneous movement too. So you might sort of gently rock or the legs
It's investigative, so experimental, it's investigative. When you're ready and feeling easeful, raise the foot that's on the floor off the floor, and still there may or may not be investigative movements. Sometimes you want to move right over to one side or right over to the other. It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. I think the original song title was It Tain't What You Do, but the way that you do it. So, you know, the movement should be conducing to absorption, and that absorption itself conduces to doubt disappearing completely, intuition arising, and the breath opening up. Right? When you're ready, lift your head, and you'll see a little upside down triangle between the legs. Plunge the same hand as the near leg through that triangle, interlace around your far shin or back thigh. This is called Suchirandrasana. The head can come back down and you can roll around. Again, looking for sensations. There you go. I found one and I couldn't speak. So that's, you know, how you describe the sensations. Looking for sensations that are so rich that they supplant descriptive language, whether it be in the head or spoken out loud. They replace descriptive language and make language instead expressive. So when you feel something that's rich enough, or you taste something that's rich enough, or you smell something that's rich enough, you don't tend to express it in descriptive language. You tend to express it in expressive language. If you taste something, and coffee drinkers will know, if they get a really good coffee in the morning, they smell it, and then they sip it, and sometimes they go, They don't go, oh, it's the rich flavor of 3 different coffee beans from, you know, they go, Right? So that language at that point, the coffee is too rich to be able to describe, to be able to limit. It's actually taken them through the coffee into the interdependent field. Can you believe it? That wouldn't be a very good advert on the TV, I suppose, but it is the truth, the spiritual truth of coffee drinking, wine tasting, swimming in sparkling water, having a hug from someone you like. You know, they're portals. Any rich sensation, including any stretch you can find in your hip and buttock. To make a rich sensation cross us over into absorption, into this fundamental reality of interdependence, all we've got to do is agree to the richness. We do that usually by breathing our agreement. We breathe our agreement. And in your day-to-day life, you're always breathing agreement or disagreement. Okay, this is a wonderful pose to spend a considerable amount of time in. We'll release nice and easy so that we can experience the same pose on the other side. Bring your feet down, hands back to the upper chest, just scoot the buttocks under. Let me hear you take a deep breath in, followed by a deep breath out. And then followed by another deep breath. So there's a sense in which we are giving to the breath, which is a greater intelligence than our conditioned thoughts. A sense in which we're giving to the breath, which is a greater intelligence than our conditioned thoughts, because intelligence here means the ability to respond to the living moment. In fact, that's what it always means, to respond to the living moment. And the only way you can respond to the living moment is to be open and empty, like a surfer on a wave. You know, you've just got to be available. Raise up your other leg. Dorsiplantar flex, rotate, internally, externally, bend, extend, shake, whatever. Just bring life to it. I can't remember, there's 2 people that wrote that song, Tain't What You Do, The Way You Do It. Can't remember their names, sorry. I'll look it up for next time in case you're a nerd and want to know. But the lyrics, again, I really want us to sort of realize that it's not that your leg's going left or right, but that you're moving it left or right or forwards or backwards in a way that conduces to absorption.
And that absorption itself is not an abstracted idea, but something that shows up in your breath. Because when you're absorbed in what you need to know, then your breath becomes more relaxed, more expressive. When you feel you've got life, prana, in the leg, then you bend, you turn the heel in, toes out, and then bend in the knee, cross that leg over the other. You go just beyond where the outer ankle sticks out. So don't put the outer ankle on your leg, go just beyond that. Keep your foot dorsiflexed. That means it's not pointing like a ballet dancer, but it's pulled back. Lift the foot that's on the floor off the floor, lift your head. There's an inverted triangle. Inverted triangles usually represent Shakti. Extend through, interlace, and bring your head back down. Shakti means power, can loosely mean expression as well. And it's a term in the feminine case, Shakti. And so in yoga, we foster 3 particular Shaktis. And they're all interdependent. Kriya Shakti. Kriya Shakti is the power of Kriya, action. Jnana Shakti is the power to know. So your Kriya Shakti, your action Shakti, depends on your knowing Shakti. And then wanting to move in ways that express your knowing, that's called Icha Shakti, which means desire or wanting Shakti. What we need to know to facilitate our action, to inspire us to move, is the way things are. And the way things are is beyond our ability to grasp with thoughts and concepts. Thoughts and concepts become subservient. In other words, they become expressive of our direct experience of the richness that is interdependent muscle, ligament, fascia, bone, organ, breath, mind, gravity, magnetic fields, everything. So rolling this way, rolling that way, breathing through your nose, looking for sensations that are as rich as the first sip of good coffee. Nowadays, of course, it's different from when I drank coffee in the 80s, which was Nescafe, Maxwell House, and others. Nowadays, everyone likes a really good coffee. So coffee drinkers, when they have their first smell and sip, they're tasting something very rich. And for a moment, they disappear, and they can't speak other than expressive. And then, of course, they forget that moment and go back. But we want to savor those moments, whether it be the richness of your stretch or the warmth of the sun on your skin, if you've got that, or just the sense that the room is full of photons, like particles that carry the electromagnetic energy. Okay, nice and easy. Release when you're ready. Let's take a deep breath. Let's do it together. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Let it lead to a few more spontaneously deep breaths. So we're really, in a sense, giving to the breath because it is a greater intelligence than our conditioning, which doesn't even agree with itself. Our conditioning tells us things that contradict. We have many different types of conditioning, telling us this and also telling us that. Pop your hands behind your head, fingers interlaced. Hands behind your head, fingers interlaced. And take a breath or two. Can you feel your scapula, your shoulder blades, are being pressed into the body medially? That is to say, the inner edge near the spine is being pressed into the body. The rhomboid muscles between the scapulars get a little moment to be pressed into and therefore invited to let go. And the chest muscles, the pectoralis, which come from the arm bone to the breastbone, those muscles also get invited to release in a way that is necessarily interdependent with the breath.
So notice the release of the full weight of your arms depends on the release of the pectoralis, the chest, and the release of the chest depends on the release of the breath, and the release of the breath depends on a release into this spontaneous knowing. Knowing isn't something you accumulate, it's something you surrender to. Raise up your feet when you're ready. So this is flexing the hips. Let's add to flexing the hips, flexing the abdomen. So lift your head. So you've got hip flexion and abdominal flexion. This, of course, pushes your lumbar and the thoracic region into the floor, and the fascia that covers that region gets pressed into, which pushes the fluid out, which means in a moment when we release, it will come back in greater quantities. Let's release slowly the head first. The feet second, toes first, heels second. Take a deep breath once you've landed that I can hear. Take 2 or 3. Hopefully one breath opens up a set that follow, like one big wave. You sometimes get a set, you know. Now we're going to float the feet up, right? That means to say we're going to use the abdominals and just float. So the toes, the feet are hanging from the ankles and the toes are hanging towards the floor. Continue to float the legs towards the pelvis. Float the legs towards the pelvis. Close the angle between the thighs and the pelvis. Let the legs come towards your tummy. Lift up your head again. Now you can feel, just as we did in the cat-cat pose earlier, we can feel how the upper and lower fibers slide into a deeper weave with each other. But also, each of the individual muscle cells are individually toned. And as we come back down very slowly, we can feel the converse. The muscles keeping their tone, but the fibers sliding through deeper weave. Head down first. And this time we're going to only touch the floor with our toes only. Right? Toes only. Breathing through the nose. Once the toes have touched, we push the lower back close to the floor. The abdomen is still active, keeping that stability. Raise up your head and breathe through the nose. Hopefully you feel a lot in the belly. Breathe into it. Now float the feet up. Feel the belly coming on to a deeper sensation. Open the angle at the back of the knees once the feet are off the floor. Open the angle at the back of the knees to 90 degrees only. We're going to take the knee that's closest to the shrine side of the room and the elbow that's furthest from the shrine side of the room towards each other. So turn towards the shrine side of the room. And then you return to center and do the other way. I said towards each other there, don't have to reach, of course. One more time each side. Keep calm. Keep the lower back intimate with the floor. Take your own time. Breathe through the nose. Jaw soft. Return to center. Head down, feet down. Everyone take a deep breath. Sigh like exhale. Take another after that, or let it happen. Let them happen. There's a sense of surrender, which brings about power. It's kind of the opposite to what we, the sort of bravado approach of, elbowing people out of the way. But actually, surrender brings power. Because if you're light, if you're empty, if you're open, then you're available to respond to the multiple expressive nuances of the interdependent now. Okay, release your hands from behind. That's a good sentence, wasn't it? Release your hands from behind your head. And keep your legs bent, however. Stretch your arms towards your feet and take hold of your yoga mat. Really grip it firmly. Use it to pull your shoulders down away from your ears. Use it to pull, and as you're bringing your arms down, turn them out at the top. So the arms externally rotate. Still hold the mat, but you turn your arms out and hold it firmly, that mat. If you turn your arms out while bringing the arms down, you'll find your spine lifts off the floor. And as a result of it lifting off the floor, you can feel certain muscle areas that normally you don't even know are holding tension, revealing that tension, like the upper fibers of the trapezius in the neck, Sometimes you can feel it in the rhomboids, sometimes you can feel it in the chest muscles, the pectoralis. Breathe into those areas, let them express their release, let them express their needs through any movements that make them feel better in terms of flow. Now begin to lift your bum off the floor. As you lift your bum up, your feet stay down, your bum comes up, you can move your pelvis left and right, up and down. You can even shake it, bounce it, tilt it, because we want to keep the lower back muscles soft and long. The lower back muscles soft and long. It may be that you get to a certain height and it feels wonderful, like you can really work on loosening those lower back muscles, quadratus lumborum, and maybe you can really start to tune in on the pelvic floor, the energetic area of the pelvic floor. Some people feel they want to come higher. If you do come higher, turn the arms out more so that you open up the gateway to the chest. So the arms externally rotate and the chin and chest come towards each other. Breathe easy. Don't worry if that's your phone alarm. It's quite soothing, quite pleasant. Okay. Chin and chest towards each other. Come down. Never know if that ringtone is sort of pleasant or slightly scary. Slightly scary as well, isn't it? Release and stretch the legs. Turn the palms up. Take a breath just as you are. Palms up, arms away from the body, legs bent. Breathe through your nose. So legs bent, but your feet not too close to the bum, so your knees have plenty of space. Extend your legs out. Scoot your shoulder blades under your body, like scoot them under your shoulder blades. Scoot them under your body. You can top and tail if you can't do that with your arms. But your hands should be off the yoga mat. With the shoulder blades scooted under, it leaves the chest buoyant. Almost, you could say, floating. Close the eyes and release the weight of the whole body. Close the eyes, release the weight of the whole body. If you are a bit cold, you want someone to come and put a blanket on you, and you want that someone to be anyone in particular, but probably me, because I'm the only one who's not on the back. Just put up that hand and I'll bring that. Just seems to have got it. Do one blanket put over you. This is your moment to be bone idle. And bring it to you. Shoulder blades to the hand. Don't worry, you haven't missed the boat. I think, oh, I do want to crank it up. Maybe he's too busy. I shouldn't ask. Don't worry. That's what I get paid for. Here's a gotcha. Coming over. Feel the whole body as a whole body. Release. The whole body. Arms, legs. Whole body as a whole body releasing. Arms, legs, and head. It's a lovely sunny spot you've got. Anyone else want a blanket on them? Do let me know. Feel the full body release into gravity.
What a beautiful relationship there is between giving and expanding. The more of one, the more of the other. The mind returns to its origin, complete expansion, Brahman. Just feel into the body by wiggling the toes and the fingers and ankles and wrists. So that expanded, completely edgeless, expanded fundamental reality can feel its way into this little pinpoint, which is one of its millions infinite expressions. Bend your legs when you're ready. Place your feet on the floor, scoot the buttocks under, and let the lower back rest in the breath. Take a deep breath, in other words. The lower back rest in the breath. Then roll onto your side, facing away from the shrine side of the room. Draw your knees up. Tummy soft. Knees drawn up. Tummy soft. Roll in your own time back the other way. Knees drawn up, tummy soft. Let yourself come round naturally, stretching out in your own way. And when you feel ready to come up, bring yourself up from the side.